Exodus 13 1-22 tells the story of the Lord commanding the Israelites to sanctify all the firstborn to him, both of man and of beast. The Israelites were to remember the day they came out of Egypt, and the Lord brought them out with a strong hand. The Lord commanded the Israelites to keep the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days, and every firstling of a beast was to be the Lord's. The Lord commanded the Israelites to redeem every firstborn of man among their children, and every firstling of an ass was to be redeemed with a lamb. The Israelites were to keep this ordinance in his season from year to year, and it was to be a sign upon their hand and a memorial between their eyes. The Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt with a strong hand, and the Lord led them by day in a pillar of cloud and by night in a pillar of fire. The Lord did not take away the pillar of the cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people. Exodus 14 1-31 tells the story of the Lord commanding the Israelites to encamp by the Red Sea. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he pursued the Israelites with his chariots and horsemen. The Israelites were afraid and cried out to the Lord, but the Lord promised to fight for them and they were to hold their peace. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land. The Israelites went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand, and on their left. The Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, but the Lord looked upon the host of the Egyptians and troubled their chariot wheels, and the Egyptians fled from the face of Israel. The Lord commanded Moses to stretch out his hand over the sea, and the waters returned to their strength, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots, and the horsemen, and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them, there remained not so much as one of them. The Israelites walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and the Israelites saw the Egyptians dead upon the sea shore. The Israelites feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Exodus 15 1-27 tells the story of the children of Israel singing a song of Moses, extolling the Lord as a man of war and rejoicing in their deliverance from Egypt. The Lord had triumphed gloriously, and the horse and his rider had been thrown into the sea. The Lord was the strength and song of the Israelites, and he had become their salvation. The Lord had cast Pharaoh's chariots and host into the sea, and his chosen captains were drowned in the Red Sea. The Lord was glorious in power, and he had overthrown those who rose up against him. The Lord had stretched out his right hand and the earth had swallowed the enemies. The Lord had guided the Israelites in his strength to his holy habitation, and the people would pass over and the Lord would reign forever and ever. The Israelites went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters because they were bitter. The people murmured against Moses, but the Lord showed Moses a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. The Lord made a statute and an ordinance for the Israelites and proved them. If they would diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord, and do that which is right in his sight, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, the Lord would put none of these diseases upon them, which he had brought upon the Egyptians, for he was the Lord that healed them. The Israelites came to Elim, where were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Exodus 16 1-36 tells the story of the Israelites traveling to the wilderness of Sin and murmuring against Moses and Aaron for lack of bread. The Israelites longed for the flesh pots and the bread of Egypt. The Lord then rained bread from heaven for the Israelites, and they gathered a certain rate every day, that the Lord may prove them, whether they will walk in his law, or no. The Israelites were to gather twice as much on the 6th day, as on the other days, and on the 7th day, they were to rest. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for 1 man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. The Israelites were to keep the Sabbath, and on the 7th day, they were to rest and gather none. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years, until they came to the land inhabited, and they did eat manna, until they came unto the borders of the land of Canaan. An omer was the 10th part of an ephah, and the Israelites were to fill an omer of it to be kept for their generations, that they may see the bread wherewith the Lord had fed them in the wilderness, when he brought them forth from the land of Egypt. Exodus 17 1-16 tells the story of the Israelites traveling to Rephidim and finding no water to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and accused him of bringing them to the wilderness to kill them and their cattle with thirst. The Lord commanded Moses to take his rod, and go before the people and smite the rock in Horeb, and water would come out of the rock, that the people may drink. Moses did so, and the Israelites drank the water, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling and testing of the Lord. Afterward, Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim, and Moses commanded Joshua to choose men and go out and fight with Amalek. Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill, and when Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. Moses' hands grew heavy, and Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, one on the one side, and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword, and the Lord commanded Moses to write this for a memorial in a book and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for he will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi, for the Lord had sworn that he would have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Exodus 18:1-27 tells the story of Jethro, the priest of Midian, and Moses' father-in-law, coming to Moses with Moses' wife and sons in the wilderness. Jethro offered sacrifices to the Lord, and Aaron and the elders of Israel came to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. The next day, Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from morning until evening. Jethro saw all that Moses did for the people and advised Moses that it was not good for him to do it alone, for he would surely wear away, both himself and the people with him. Jethro counsels Moses to teach the law, to appoint lesser judges, and to delegate power to them, so that the burden would be shared, and every great matter they would bring to Moses, but every small matter they would judge themselves. Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law, and did all that he had said, and he chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. They judged the people at all seasons, and the hard causes they brought to Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. Jethro then departed from Moses and went his way into his own land. Exodus 19:1-25 tells the story of the Israelites arriving at the wilderness of Sinai, and the Lord appeared to them in a thick cloud, and they heard the voice of the Lord. The Lord made a covenant with the Israelites and promised to make them a peculiar treasure, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation, if they would obey His voice and keep His covenant. The Israelites agreed to do all that the Lord had spoken, and Moses went up to the Lord and laid before their faces all the words which the Lord commanded him. The Lord commanded Moses to sanctify the people and to have them wash their clothes, and to be ready for the third day, for the Lord would come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. On the third day, there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, and the people trembled. The Lord came down upon Mount Sinai, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. The Lord commanded Moses to charge the people, lest they break through to gaze and many of them perish, and let the priests also, which come near to the Lord, sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. Moses went down to the people and spoke to them, and the Lord commanded Moses to say to the Israelites, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, you shall be my peculiar treasure above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, and an holy nation." Exodus 21-26 tells the story of the Lord revealing the 10 Commandments to the Israelites, who have recently been freed from slavery in Egypt. The Lord begins by identifying Himself as the one who brought the Israelites out of Egypt, and they are not to have any other gods before Him. They are not to make any graven image or any likeness of anything in heaven above or that is in the earth beneath or that is in the water under the earth. They are not to bow down to them or serve them, for the Lord is a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate Him, and showing mercy to thousands of them that love Him and keep His commandments. The Lord also commands the Israelites not to take His name in vain, to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, to honor their father and mother, not to kill, commit adultery, steal, bear false witness against their neighbor, or covet their neighbor's wife, manservant, maidservant, ox, ass, or anything that is their neighbor's. The Lord then speaks to Moses, telling him to say to the Israelites that they have seen that the Lord has talked with them from heaven, and they are not to make gods of silver or gold. The Lord also instructs the Israelites to build an altar of earth and sacrifice thereon their burnt offerings and peace offerings, and if they make an altar of stone, not to build it of hewn stone, nor to go up by steps unto His altar, that their nakedness be not discovered thereon. The Israelites are in awe of the Lord's presence and the thundering, lightnings, noise of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. They tell Moses to speak to them, and they will hear, but not to let God speak to them, for they will die. Moses tells the people not to fear, for the Lord is come to prove them, and that His fear may be before their faces, that they sin not. The people stand afar off, and Moses draws near unto the thick darkness where God was. Exodus 21:1-36 is a continuation of the Lord giving laws and commandments to the Israelites, who have recently been freed from slavery in Egypt. The Lord lays out laws concerning servants, marriage, and various offenses, including the death penalty. The Lord also lays out the principle of an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and the damage done by oxen. The Lord states that if a man buys a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years and go out free in the 7th. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself, but if he was married, then his wife and children shall go out with him. If the master gives the servant a wife, and she bears him children, the wife and children shall be the master's, and the servant shall go out by himself. The Lord also lays out laws concerning the selling of a daughter to be a maidservant, and the treatment of women and children, and the penalties for various crimes such as murder, theft, and cursing one's parents. The Lord also lays out the principle of an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and the compensation for injuries caused by oxen. The passage also includes laws concerning the opening and digging of pits and the responsibility for the safety of animals. The passage emphasizes the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions and the consequences that follow. Overall, the passage underscores the importance of justice and fairness, and the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions and the consequences that follow. Exodus 22 1-31 is a continuation of the Lord giving laws and commandments to the Israelites, who have recently been freed from slavery in Egypt. The Lord lays out laws concerning theft, destruction by fire, care of the property of others, borrowing, and sacrifices to false gods. The Lord also emphasizes the importance of treating others fairly, such as not vexing a stranger, oppressing them, afflicting widows and fatherless children, and lending money to the poor. The Lord also lays out the penalties for various crimes, such as sacrificing to any god, save unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. The Lord also commands the Israelites to be holy and to not delay to offer the first of their ripe fruits, and of their liquors, and the firstborn of their sons shall thou give unto me. The Lord also lays out the importance of treating animals humanely and not to eat any flesh that is torn of beasts in the field, ye shall cast it to the dogs. The passage emphasizes the importance of treating others fairly and justly, and the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions and the consequences that follow. The Lord also emphasizes the importance of being holy and setting themselves apart for Him. Overall, the passage underscores the importance of justice, fairness, and holiness, and the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions and the consequences that follow. The Lord's laws and commandments serve as a guide for the Israelites to live in a way that is pleasing to Him and to lead a life that is just, fair and holy. Exodus 23 1-33 is a continuation of the Lord giving laws and commandments to the Israelites, who have recently been freed from slavery in Egypt. The Lord lays out laws concerning integrity and godly conduct, such as not raising a false report, not following a multitude to do evil, not accounting a poor man in his cause, and not oppressing a stranger. The Lord also emphasizes the importance of treating animals humanely and not to eat any flesh that is torn of beasts in the field, ye shall cast it to the dogs. The Lord also commands the Israelites to keep 3 annual feasts, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering, and to appear before the Lord God 3 times in the year. The Lord also promises to send an angel before the Israelites, to keep them in the way, and to bring them into the place which I have prepared. The Lord also promises to take sickness away from the midst of thee, and to set thy bounds from the Red Sea even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. The passage emphasizes the importance of integrity and godly conduct, and the importance of treating others fairly and justly, and the importance of treating animals humanely. The Lord's laws and commandments serve as a guide for the Israelites to live in a way that is pleasing to Him and to lead a life that is just, fair and holy. The Lord also promises to take care of the Israelites, and to protect them and guide them in their journey. Overall, the passage underscores the importance of integrity, fairness, and holiness, and the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions and the consequences that follow. The Lord's laws and commandments serve as a guide for the Israelites to live in a way that is pleasing to Him and to lead a life that is just, fair and holy. The Lord also promises to take care of the Israelites, and to protect them and guide them in their journey.